Welcome to Voices,
a podcast from the Institute for Human Rights and Business.
Here, we're seeking to elevate the range of perspectives
on the role of business in the world
and in people's everyday lives.
Hello, my name is Francesca Fairbairn. I work for the Institute for Human Rights and Business. And today on World Maritime Day 2020, I'm talking to Jacqueline Smith, who's Maritime Coordinator for the International Transport Workers Federation. And as you can imagine, Jacqueline has been extremely busy in the last 6 to 9 months particularly, although obviously before that as well, working on seafarers' rights, but particularly in the last 6 to 9 months because of the plight of many stranded seafarers, anywhere between 300 to 400,000, depending on which figures. It's very difficult to know exactly how many. But these are seafarers who are unable to be repatriated because of COVID restrictions in port or because their ships have been abandoned by their operators, not even thinking about those seafarers who have gone home and now have no work and are unable to go back to sea. So, hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, Francesca. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for talking to us. I know how busy you are. So perhaps if you could just give us a quick introduction to ITF's work in general, but in particular in the last 6 to 9 months on what Bloomberg has described as the worst shipping crisis in decades that puts lives and trade at risk.
So the ITF is a global union federation, and our members are national transport workers unions around the world. So we have unions all over the globe. And of course, any are maritime unions that represent seafarers, of course, dockers, workers in navigation, and also fishers. Our focus, of course, or my responsibility are to assist those unions to assist their members. The work that we do is, of course, on a global level to try to coordinate and assist affiliates with having best practices where they can learn from each other. In this crisis that we've been seeing, that is turned into a humanitarian crisis, especially when it comes to seafarers, but also fishers, we see that there is just such a complete lack of coordination amongst governments. And we have been working very hard with our social partners, both those within the joint negotiating group and also with the International Chamber of Shipping, to try to get governments to coordinate and facilitate crew change so that there's a safe corridor for seafarers to safely be repatriated and for new signers to come on. We have got a lot of verbal confirmation from UN agencies, so ILO, IMO, even the UN Secretary General went out in support. The Pope came out in support for seafarers and fishers. And we've had other organizations do so. The same with your organization has come out in support of seafarers and say that crew change needs to start happening. But still, it's just been one step forwards and 2 steps back. It's almost as if every time we feel that we've made progress, then it reverts back again. And we see that 93 countries have ratified, or it's ratified the MLC, which is in force. 97 is actually ratified, but 93 is
the Maritime Labour Convention. Yeah,
Labour Convention is in force for. And in that, it does say that seafarers should not be working on board more than 11 months. And we're receiving reports of seafarers who've been on board 17 months and some even 19 months. So even before the crisis started, means that they were in breach of the Maritime Labour Convention. And our question is, governments who ratify, implement international legislation, how can they so easily just put that aside, those regulations aside, those rights for those people aside, just to keep trade going? They want the cargo, but they don't want to take the responsibility for the humans.
And so, as I touched on at the beginning, the cause of this is partly ports not letting crew off because of nerves about spreading COVID, partly ships being I understand that there are bulk carriers being parked off the coast of e.g. Singapore with skeleton crew on board, just waiting for the price of oil to go up, for example, or there's ships that have been abandoned? No, just sort of left outside port for various other reasons, not able to go into port. Is that right?
Yes, we have seen an increase in abandoned crew, meaning that the ship owner or ship manager is completely not communicating, not providing even provisions. We've seen an increase, especially in the Gulf states, around the Gulf states. Now, there are various flags, various owners of companies from various countries, so it's not one specific, but we have seen an increase because most likely they've gotten into financial issues and they just have washed their hands of it and run away. So our inspectorate, we have about 140 inspectors worldwide. They've been functioning as like a lifeline for the seafarers. They've been functioning as travel agents. They've been functioning as almost consulate staff to try to get them visas, trying to get them provisions, so food and water and even fuel, because they've just been abandoned. So it is a dire situation, and it's not getting any better, even though there are some trickling movement, but it's just not sustainable. And it's funny that you're having the World's Maritime Day with the theme Sustainable Shipping for Sustainable Planet. But how can shipping be sustainable if you're not sustaining those workers on board and their rights?
So either you or I referenced earlier on the joint statement to governments from the head of the ILO, UNCTAD, the International Organization for Migration, the Food and Agriculture Organization, High Commissioner for Human Rights, UN Global Compact, International Maritime Organization, etc., 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 calling on governments to address this issue. But from our perspective as the Institute for Human Rights and Business, I'm wondering what you think is the ITF businesses can do, how they can use their leverage, and businesses, whether they be charterers, customers, ship owners, even investors with shipping portfolios who own ships, how can they bring their influence to bear to alleviate this situation?
I think that, anyone who, or any business or individual who is able to gain the attention of governments, and it's not just one department, because it has to be a coordinated approach from departments, because we have we have transport ministries understanding the situation, but then you're having health departments or ministries not wanting to, or having the responsibility to protect the citizens in the country. And then you're having, issues with immigration and border control and just interior infrastructure ministries. So if businesses can say, and because everyone has most likely the ear of some kind of minister, someplace, be it trade, be it health, because they provide medicine, be it energy, because they provide fuel or oil and gas, and to raise it and say that this needs to be resolved and join us in pushing this forward. And also going to those companies, the shipping companies, and asking, have you been able to exchange your crew? Have there been new crew, have been repatriations? Don't penalize companies for deviating from their normal route or their scheduled route, because we have seen companies saying, no, we want you to make sure that your crew are not on board longer than 11 months, but you can't deviate. And if they need to deviate, or if they need to stay in port, then don't penalize those employers for having to do so, because they're doing so to make sure that the crew on board are not fatigued and not stressed, because they've been on board for 12 months plus and don't know when they're going home.
So customers and charterers, for example, are saying we need our products now in port, and they need to be a little bit more, give more leeway to ship owners and operators, with the understanding that they need to change crew somehow. And also presumably there's a cost involved, an additional cost involved in changing crew, who sometimes maybe have to be repatriated through 3 or 4 countries if there are certain ports that they can go through.
They need to share the responsibility. It's costing everyone. This is costing everyone. So you want your products, you want things to continue to move. then you also need to take responsibility onto the seafarers and say, okay, yes, we sympathize with them, but just as long as our goods continue to be transported, then we're fine.
I read a statistic yesterday in, I think it was an article on Bloomberg that said that if shipping were an economy, it'd be the 6th largest economy in the world. So it is an enormous contribution to the global economy, and therefore everybody needs to bring their influence to bear, whether they be asset managers with large number of ships in their portfolio. They are also responsible for looking at the ships that they own and seeing what is going on those ships. And one of the problems with shipping is it's invisible. It's on the high seas. You don't see these people. You just get your petrol in your car or whatever, but you don't see how it gets here. And it's this massive invisible workforce that we've got to become more aware of.
Absolutely. And there has been a lot of media in mainstream press, which has been really good, but we're still just struggling because, it's there's a lot of things going on in the world. We get that. But when 90% of everything is transported by ships, then, even though they're not the largest group of workers, but they are a very crucial piece in the supply chain. And if you're going to have a disruption to the supply chain, then that's going to affect everyone much more negatively than it has been so far. But they are, the seafarers, they don't care if they're defined as key workers. They want to be treated as key workers. So however you define them doesn't really matter. They want to be able to go home. They're just exhausted. And we receive, hundreds of messages a day from seafarers saying, please help us to get home. Unfortunately, a lot of them won't want to identify themselves because they're afraid that if they do cause an issue, that they're not going to be rehired again, or even in some cases blacklisted. But, we say to them, you have to stand up. And if you stand up, we will stand with you. So, and our inspectors and affiliates are doing an amazing job trying to get these seafarers home. But again, for every one that we get home, there's 10 still more stranded in a dire situation.
Yeah, who maybe don't know who to call. They don't know the number to call. They don't know how to get themselves out of their situation. There'll be a proportion of them who've paid large recruitment fees for their job in the first place, who therefore are kind of, if they do go home having lost their job, they've still got to then repay those recruitment fees. And so that's another reason why they wouldn't want to come forward and stand up and say,
well, seafarers shouldn't be paying recruitment fees. So if they stood up and told us that they owe this manning agent massive recruitment fees, then we go after that manning agent. So
is that not a huge thing amongst seafarers?
It is, but they're not. I think it's less now after the Maritime Labour Convention came in place, because there's very clear rules in regards to that, and a lot of governments have been clamping down on that, but we still know that there are the rogue ones that do it. Yeah. But the manning agents are paid for by the companies. So the companies work with us saying, we don't want our seafarers, who we've already paid a manning agent to find qualified seafarers, to be having to pay thousands of dollars to get the job in addition. So yeah, we do work on those cases as well. So
okay, brilliant. So what we're saying is all businesses, wherever they're involved, in a ship, no matter how, even if it's 1, 2, 3 steps removed, they need to be bringing their influence to bear to alleviate the situation of these 300,000 to 400,000 seafarers. And that this is a number that has not gone down since the beginning of the pandemic, has it?
No, it hasn't.
I don't think it's gone down.
And we know, especially multinational companies have massive influence. That's how it is. They have massive influence with governments around the world, even because what they produce is in one country is providing to the economy in that country. So we want them to use that influence because they have a network that's different from the network we have, and to use those contacts and influence so that the governments actually see that, yes, we need to put in place proper procedures and protocols so that the seafarers can be repatriated, that they need to be prioritized.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. That's amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us on World Maritime Day, and keep up the great work with ITF, and let's hope that number starts to go down very soon.
Thank you, Francesca. I think that we needed to change the theme from the World Maritime Day to sustainable shipping for sustainable seafarers.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.